Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and with this video, I'll be discussing my thoughts on Season 2, Episode 7 of Star Trek Discovery, entitled Light and Shadows. And I'm just going to get out of the way right away, directly into spoilery territory, because this is a spoilery discussion after all. Talos frickin' 4. Talos 4 gets a name drop at the end of this episode, and it's apparently where Michael Burnham is actually taking Spock, now reunited. They are both in this episode. That's where they're going in the next one. Per the trailer for the next episode, we are going to Talos 4, and I couldn't be more stoked and excited because of all eras of Star Trek. The Cage Menagerie era that calls back on when Pike was in command of the Enterprise with Spock and Number 1 and all that kind of stuff. That is the thing that stands out the most to me, that I fanboy over, and I'm the most intrigued by, because it's what we've seen so little of. It was the Star Trek that might have been in a lot of ways, because that was hailing back to the original Star Trek pilot before William Shatner would come on as Captain Kirk and everything like that. And you know, even though I like all the Easter eggs, nods, and references, we got a Tribble in Season 1, we had a name drop of Captain Pike and Captain Archer and all this kind of stuff in Season 1. All throughout, there are a bunch of different Easter eggs and whatever like that in Season 2 thus far, like we've heard Cestus 3 mentioned and stuff like that. While I do love that stuff, this is directly calling back to The Cage, the original pilot. And because it's replete with timey-wiminess, you know, taking that term from Doctor Who, with a temporal vortex that opens and all of that stuff that's going on in this episode with Pike and Ash Tyler and, you know, Arium getting seemingly affected by some kind of future tech. We don't know what it is. It's something like out of the Matrix. You know, is it Borg tech? Is it something else? Is it something related to the Red Angels, who are apparently a species from the future? They pretty much, you know, hedged all bets and put their money down on the table that this is somebody probably from the future, could be from the past, and it's just the tachyon signatures messing with their sensors. But it's a suit. You know, they've pretty much relegated it to a fact that it is a suit. It is an apparatus that some being or beings are wearing, and they're coming back or forward and manipulating the timeline. And so we are reintroduced to Spock in this episode. I should say Burnham is, but through her are we as well. And he's kind of wearing a beard like I am. You know, but he highly reminds me of Tuvok. How Tuvok was, I don't remember the condition that he was suffering, but in the series finale of Star Trek Voyager, the future Tuvok had succumbed to some sort of neurological disorder, and he was very much, you know, repeating a star date over and over and over again, very similarly to how we see Spock in this episode, only it's a completely different thing. It's coordinates that he's reciting over and over and over again, and it's actually backwards because of mirror images and whatever mindscapes and all that kind of stuff, as Burnham deduces. All of the stuff, all of the interpersonal, familial interconnectivity between she and Amanda and Sarek, and how they've all been working clandestinely, you know, apart from each other. She hid Spock, who came, you know, to her looking for her assistance, her help, in a cave full of Katra stones to sort of mask his mental signature, which Sarek has been searching for, and all this kind of stuff. I mean, I was just on the edge of my seat. So far, thus far, luckily, none of these revelations really wholly, you know, are counterintuitive to what we already know, what has already been established with Spock, going back to TOS and things like that, and the Spock that we've seen through all of the films, and you know, even the Zachary Quino Spock and whatever like that, but going all the way back to the Leonard Nimoy original, there's room enough for him to have suffered this very dyslexic kind of, you know, neurological disorder, and to now be just, you know, sort of being all encompassed by that because of whatever revelations he has been, you know, debuted to. And as we sort of get the hints and whispers in the trailer for the next episode, it's something that has been revealed to him about a potential future. The future that is probably the one we are most familiar with. It looks like, via the trailer, we see visions of you know, Romulus being destroyed, perhaps even Vulcan being destroyed. Because, again, there's a lot of, to borrow that term from Doctor Who, a lot of timey-wimey stuff, wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff going on throughout this episode. And that's just one half of it. That's just one half of the episode. As I say, we also have, Pike and Ash Tyler going in a shuttlecraft, which it's the first time I really got a really long look at the shuttlecraft in this series, between the one that Burnham takes to Vulcan. And it was cool seeing, that much more Vulcan. It kind of hints back to the way Vulcan looked in the 2009 Star Trek film, the J.J. Abrams film, Kelvin-verse film. But those shuttlecraft, they look a lot more TNG era than what the shuttlecraft should for this era, and whatever like that. Another visual continuity, discontinuity, if you will. So that kind of stood out to me like as being odd, but as we see with the shuttlecraft that Pike and Tyler are on, they go into this temporal anomaly, which just suddenly opens, and there's all kinds. It's literally wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey, It isn't a linear, straight line of time at all. It's past, present, and future coexisting all at once, and they are trying to find their way out of it. Now, I like, very much akin to the original series episode, Galileo 7, that Pike decides to blow the plasma vents or whatever it is to make like a flash behind them in order to hopefully get attention from Discovery, the rescue party eventually, and in this case it kind of backfires, because with past, present, and future all coexisting, Discovery, they do detect the signature, but they're detecting one from a few minutes ago, one from now, and one from the future. They're all over the place. And I like that they sort of utilized this plot to make Stamets and Tilly both relevant. Now that Tilly's arc is sort of over for the season, she's back on the bridge saying frickin' instead of the F-bomb once again, because Saru told her, do not curse on duty. Finally somebody put that into her head. Although I did like, Pike's echoing the frickin' thing. But, getting Stamets, because he has the tardigrade DNA in him, to be able to sort of parse through mentally this timey-wimey stuff of this, temporal horizon and everything like that. And he manages to get himself beamed onto the shuttlecraft, piloted out. But then there is, of course, that giant matrixy, now, maybe Borgified or some other kind of technological advancement, former probe that they sent out earlier, attacking them, trying to kill them. He manages to get them all out of there. They beam back out because he, again, using the mathematical equations, he figures out the signature, how he can send it back to Discovery. It's all a bunch of technobabble, but I was eating it up like so much candy because I love time travel stuff. I'm just a time travel fan. My all-time favorite novel is The Time Machine. So, of course, whenever there is time travel in a Star Trek series, I tend to love it. And I love the sort of, very much like the mysterious benefactor from the future in Star Trek Enterprise, when that person was first introduced and we didn't know who it was. And I don't think we ever actually found out who it was. Not Daniels, by the way, the one who was like manipulating the Romulans and this, that, and the other thing. Whenever he was communicating, there was this really cool temporal effect where you'd see someone walking ahead of themselves, like an echo, a future echo of themselves walking ahead of themselves physically. And we were kind of getting that a little bit in this episode. I loved the editing of that and that whole special effect. While on the bridge, Pike is reprimanding Ash Tyler, where Tyler's trying to bring up the fact that he needs information about Burnham and whatever like that, even though technically he doesn't, but it pertains to, and relates to Spock. So, of course, he wants to be in on the loop of that information. And Pike's like, not having it. He gets up from the captain's chair and all of a sudden it replays and all that kind of stuff. I love it. I eat it up, as I say, like, oh, so much candy. And I'm just bouncing off the walls with this episode. As I say, everything that was going on in this episode was absolutely captivating, mind-blowing, intriguing. And then you cap it all off with Georgiou, who again, they kind of utilized this story to make her character relevant, where otherwise I'm just kind of like, why is she here? But good old Section 31 Captain Leland, he seems like he's a good guy, a good enough guy, coming to Burnham and saying, look, Spock is going to need your help. You're going to need to go to Starbase 23. We're going to spend some time with him. They're probably going to, mindscape, dig and dive and whatever, and bring whatever he's got inside out of his head. So you have Georgiou coming to Burnham and saying, kidnap his ass, get him out of Dodge, because they're going to do something that's probably he's not going to come back from, quite frankly. So take him, run, and figure stuff out. And then we find out the bomb drops that, when Leland gets up in the face of Georgiou, what's going on with this? Don't outlive your own purpose on board this Section 31 vessel. And she's like, oh, are you afraid that Burnham's going to find out you're the one who's responsible for killing her family, her parents? And it was like, like, oh, snap. But then, as I say, it brought it all back to bear, going back to the original pilot of Star Trek itself, the cage, with Talos 4, with the Talosians, with Captain Pike's eventual ending up there. And then if you read the Margaret Wander Bonanno book, Burning Dreams, he goes back, and so does Spock eventually, and Spock finds out what happened to Pike in that novel, which is just as riveting as this episode was. This episode, for me, is the cream of the crop. Had everything and more that I ever could have wanted out of a Star Trek episode, bar none, but especially out of a Star Trek Discovery episode. It was mind-blowing. And I love it. And I can't wait to see, even though I do have trepidation and reservations about the newly designed Talosian look, the appearance of these beings, and going to Talos, which just looks like a Doctor Who rock quarry. We'll have to see. It'll remain to be seen how good or bad it follows through on all of this and such like that. And it seems like Spock will be, in some way, shape, or form, back in his right mind. So I can't wait to see Ethan Peck's take on the role. And I like that he does have a sort of deep voice a la, Leonard Nimoy, whereas Zachary Quino, he had this, he was a spitting image of a young Nimoy. Here we have the voice, and I think that'll make me buy, and it'll, be sort of palate cleansing to take on a new actor as such an iconic role once again in the form of Spock. But I can't wait to hear what he has to say to Burnham and what he has to reveal and all that kind of good stuff. And this was just a pitch perfect episode. I have no complaints at all whatsoever. Everybody served a purpose. Oh, I am, intrigued not only about what Talos 4 is going to reveal to us and going there and all that kind of stuff, even though I do have that trepidation and those reservations. But then, as I said briefly earlier on in the video, Arium was seemingly affected by whatever signal this probe that was modified from a future species or Borgified or whatever it was, almost, with the three little circular symbols, red symbols. It was almost like the Brainiac symbol from DC Comics, the Superman villain. But apparently it beamed into her eyes, and it must have modified her or maybe transferred a consciousness to her or something, because she is, for all I know, an android. I don't know if she's an android or a cybernetic being or whatever it is, if she's something wholly different as far as on the species scale or whatever like that, but that absolutely has me intrigued as well. So everything about this episode was pitch perfect. Everything was awesome sauce. And I ate it up. I couldn't get enough of it. This might be the first episode I watch again, excitedly, because most of the episodes I've only watched once. Even going back to season 1, there were a few that stood out to me like, oh, I could watch that again, and I never did. Eventually, I want to own the entire series on DVD, and then I can go over them all again. But this was the best of the best thus far. For season 2, for the series all told. And really cool news just ahead of this is that Star Trek Discovery has been renewed for a 3rd season to boot. So I can't wait to see what they have in store for us, especially if this is the new status quo as far as storytelling and characterization. I will be on board without a problem, without fail, with my communicator, John. Rather than bells. And so I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments below if you've seen episode 7 of season 2 of Star Trek Discovery, entitled Light and Shadows. Love it or hate it, anything goes in the comments below, what you thought of it. Just be respectful of other people's opinions and respectable sharing your own. And if you enjoyed this video and would like to consider supporting my channel, please have a look at my PayPal contribution link posted both in the description as well as the comments below, where you have options very much akin to Patreon that you can explore as far as setting up a monthly contribution, a one-time only kind of thing. You can send me a personal message with any contribution you see fit to send my way, requesting topics I may discuss in the future, ask for shout-outs, make recommendations of things I may check out and discuss down the line, and of course you'll get credit for it if I happen to mention it. And anything you saw fit to send my way would be 2 thumbs up for me and secure my longevity on YouTube for the foreseeable future. And so yeah, otherwise that'll be pretty much it for me on this. I cannot wait for the next one, and I'll catch you all later. Live long and prosper.